dear sister.
Well, hello, sister.
Hello, Clarice. I love that movie.
I don't.
Jessica's laughing. Yes, it's like, no, I did not come on here to talk about Silence of the Lambs. And yet caregiving sometimes feels that way. It puts the lotion on the skin.
It's very scary.
I'm pretty sure I did that with Jason. It puts the lotion on the skin when he was burned, and I would try to get him tickled, and I would put it on his neck as he needed it. But anyway.
You do everything you can to make people giggle. So,
you know, I think that goes with caregiving. You have to laugh a little bit. And so it seems appropriate that you would say it puts the lotion on the skin. I think I am it because I was putting it on Jason's neck. Anyway, sidebar. We're totally distracted. I am so sorry, Jessica. Jessica's like, I've heard the intros before.
But you know, you didn't sing this morning. So, I mean, I'm okay
sorry.
with that.
Me. You never know. I may break out in the middle of it. I may break out. Jay, we have the best guest today. I am so excited to have Jessica. Jessica, do you go by Jessica or can I call you Jess? What do your friends call you?
My friends call me Jess.
Oh, I love that. Can I call you Jess, please?
That's fine. Yes. You're good.
I am her bestie now. JJ's
I appreciate you for asking. Not everyone asks. Yeah. So that annoys me, but you asked. So thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to ask because I thought I'm going to call you Jess. All my friends call me Nat. So just saying that. And then there's
like
Jay.
a bug.
We're lazy.
Like a bug, Jessica.
Like
a bug.
Anyway.
I'm getting started. Natalie, zip it.
Jay. Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. So first of all, if you're not watching this on Zoom, you should because Jessica is beautiful. And today she's got all the red on. She has these fantastic red glasses. And so that her glasses choice are always my favorite. The first time I talked to her, I was like, she rocks it. She is like the caregiver rock. So let me tell you about Jessica. We are excited to have Jessica Guthrie with us today. Now, she has over 10 years of caregiving experience for her mother, Constance, who is living with Alzheimer's disease, a role that Jessica started in her 20s. Jessica has taken these experiences and started a mission, and it is a mission, to amplify caregiving narratives and ensure caregivers feel fully supported. A lot of this is through her platform, Career and Caregiving Collide. And it absolutely does because most of our caregivers work. So she is using her experiences to drive her entrepreneurial efforts to create a better world for caregivers and their loved ones. Jessica, I am so happy to have you here. I know Natalie is as well because she's your new BFF.
She has free will.
Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. You all have such good energy. So I appreciate this early in the morning. This is good.
Oh, we're going to need it.
Yeah. You'll be ready for a nap this afternoon. So I was the one that got to talk to Jessica in the very beginning. And your story is fantastic. So I want to, as Natalie says, let's start from the beginning and then skip ahead. So tell me a little bit about you and your mom, first of all. Tell us a little bit about the beginning. You were born, and I want to learn a little bit about you and your mom.
The background.
Oh my gosh. In the beginning. Yes. Okay.
It seems appropriate, especially after Easter weekend. In the beginning.
Okay. So I am the daughter of Constance Guthrie, and I was born in Northern Virginia. Was my mother's 39-year-old surprise. She thought she had the flu, and she went to the doctor, and he said, "It's not the flu. You're pregnant." Wow. And she wasn't trying to get pregnant at all, and I came along, and so I think I was the gift that she didn't even know she needed. And so I grew up very much with my mom, as she was a business owner. She owned a hair salon for 18 years in Alexandria, Virginia, and was like a very successful businesswoman. And I grew up as a young child, basically running the shop. Okay. So I, was very much the hostess with the mostest, getting to know the ladies coming to get their hair. I had my birthday party in the shop. I had a tricycle. Like I just ran the place. And so that very much speaks to the relationship that we had very, very early on. It's always been CG and JG.
Oh, I like it.
CG and JG.
So, and I'm sure that all of the ladies, they just thought you were, the bee's knees. All of the ladies getting their hair done, they were like
the bee's knees.
The bee's knees. Yes.
I was all that and 20 bags of chips. Yeah, I was great. And I think it's because my mom has always had a big personality. So I had a big personality growing up, and so I had, coordinating outfits, and I was like, I grew up really fast. I was like in all the gossip. I was laughing. I was talking. I was probably a young little lady, I'm sure.
Okay. Okay.
It's almost like well seasoned. Like they're like, oh, she's older than your age.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I can't imagine growing up though in a hair salon, because that is nothing but a good time, honestly.
Oh yeah.
Like people are just chatting and they are just telling your whole story. Yeah. And I'm surprised you didn't become a social worker. Because honestly, think about it. Like, we ask lots of stories and things like that. Okay. So you're growing up, it's you and your mom, right? And so you got no other siblings. So
No siblings.
You guys are like in it to win it. Okay. And so then you turn 18 and you're moving along. So tell me, keep going.
So much skipped. Yes. Okay. So yes, that was childhood. And then we fast forward, right? Yes, I'm an only child. She's a single mom. And so for high school, my mom was always like my biggest cheerleader, as most parents are, right? But like every single project, every single competition, performance, my mom was always there, right? And so my mom actually gave up her salon. She sold her business to basically go and work in the local school system, so that she would have the same holidays, days off, like always be present for me, right? Wow. And so I share that to paint the picture that my mom was always there, and whatever I needed to do, whether it was get my hair done, whether it was like curls at 5 a.m. for a TV show, whatever it might have been, my mom was always willing to sacrifice and show up for me. And so when it was time for college, I applied to some heavy hitters. And then the school that I wanted to get into was Dartmouth College in Hanover, New Hampshire. And I got the big envelope and I was so excited. And my mom, I remember like coming in after jumping outside by the mailbox and like, she wasn't excited. And I was like, what's wrong? And she said, you're leaving me. And I was like, yeah, but it's Dartmouth, like Ivy League, all the things. I was so excited. And she was like, yeah, but I don't know what I'm going to do, because she had given up so much to pour into me, right? So anyway, I share that to say that like I left home to go to undergrad. My mom came to visit me a couple of times. That was like very much the beginning of me stepping into what was next for Jessica, which meant like leaving my mom to figure out who she was going to be. That's important because I do believe that was the beginning of my mother, I don't want to say isolation, but being alone and not having a thing to focus on and to pour herself into, that I think that did play a role in early onset Alzheimer's disease. I'm getting ahead of myself, but that was 18.
That's interesting. No, that's an interesting thing though. But I mean, relationship is important. And if she didn't supplant the pouring into you and being your person, because that relationship shifted, the dynamic shifted, then what was she going to put in its place?
Exactly.
So this is like not caregiving, but it is. So what happened? What did your mom decide to do? I mean, you went to college, you're living your best life at Dartmouth, being all bouge. And then, and so what's your mom doing? Because is she still in Northern Virginia, which I'm just going to say Virginia's for lovers. And so, because I was like, what, Virginia? Because you said Texas.
Yeah.
And so, okay, so then what happened?
So my mom kept working. My mom is still in Fredericksburg. My mother was in the school system until she retired. And so my mom was a middle school paraprofessional, right? So she, had a routine. My mom has always been really routine. So like she had her routine. She was up at 5 a.m. She was at school by 6:30, like all the things. But after school, she had to figure out like, what am I going to do? And so she joined as a volunteer at the local Boys and Girls Club. Of course, she threw herself into the church choir, which she was the director of the church choir. I mean, she had things to do, but there's something about when you come home at night, there's no one here but her. And like when your schedule is always busy or full, or there's noise or there's movement, that like there was always me, not that I'm saying I blame myself for Alzheimer's, but I do think she really had to figure out like, how is I now going to use my time, but also like be engaged with other people and, stay sharp. And I don't think that she had someone at home pushing her and challenging her to be like as sharp as I think she could have been.
So you're going through school and you're living life. So when did caregiving begin for you? What was the first signs that something was going on with your mom?
Oh, she moves. I think Jessica moved. Did you move again after Dartmouth?
Yeah. So Dartmouth in New Hampshire, I could only stand 4 years of it. It was too cold.
Preach, girl.
I was like, oh, wait, there's something in the middle here.
Yeah. just white sky, white snow, like it was just a lot. And so at graduation, I then moved to Dallas, Texas after graduation. I joined a program called Teach for America, where I was going to become a high school social studies teacher. So I was like trying to figure out what did it mean to become an excellent teacher, like step into this professional world in Dallas, Texas. And so that was in 2010. And so then after that, I joined working for the program. So I was a teacher coach. I was working with partnerships in school communities. And then around 2013, my mom was like getting confused doing things that she had always done. So things like, driving to school. My mother's driven the same route for 18 years, yet she got lost coming home from school when there was construction, but didn't know how to get home, right? This level of anxiety was rising to do basic things like drive herself to, the grocery store. The straw broke the camel's back. Started to break the camel's back in the summer. My mom went to go visit her brother, and she had taken the train to DC, navigate the airport, all the things. And I get a call from the local commuter train station, Jessica, I don't know what to do next. And now, mind you, I'd already written out all her directions because I had noticed she was kind of anxious. But she didn't know how to navigate the airport. My mom traveled the world like globally. She loved doing that and could not navigate the airport. I had to call my uncle to come and meet her so that she wouldn't get lost and get overwhelmed when she just hops in a cab and goes. And then fast forward, my mom was displaying signs of just like major forgetfulness, but also just like really like sad and anxious. And so we were like, something's wrong. And then fast forward to July 2014, my mom got in a really bad car accident driving to church. Same route every week. And so that's when I knew that something's wrong. Luckily, because we were concerned, we had a neurologist appointment basically set up while I was home from Texas. Mind you, I live in Texas. She's in Virginia. So I'm noticing these things from afar when I'm home. And so it was the car accident. And then we went through the initial rounds of testing. And that's when the doctor said, given all that we've done, it is highly likely that your mother is living with early onset Alzheimer's disease. And then the last thing is my mom had a TIA, which is a mini stroke, in February. I put all the pieces together. I was like, oh, my mom has been stressed. My mom has been trying to hide this like forgetfulness with her school and like her colleagues, right? Like she is exhausted and like has been living with this for who knows how long, So those are the early stages.
How old was she at that time, Jessica?
66.
Yeah.
Wow. You know what? I'm going to take our break early. Jay, we'll be right back. Hey, ladies, I need to interrupt for just a second to share about the Sisterhood membership. It's basically a sale every day. And the best part, it's free. Here's the details. We're partnering with our friends at Benefit Hub and other care partners to save you money. With over 200,000 participating companies across the U.S. and abroad, you'll find discounts at your favorite local stores, huge savings on vacations, amazing deals on home, auto, and supplemental insurances, and everything in between. Go to confessionsofareluctantcaregiver.com to sign up, and then definitely tell your friends about it. They can join too. Trust me, there's a discount for everyone. And don't forget, it's free. Okay, back to confessing.
Hey, everybody, we are back here with Jessica Guthrie, and we're just getting started on when her mom the diagnosis has been made. And there are a lot of things that led up to this. And we were talking about your mom's mini stroke and what that impact, where we believe that came from, which was a lot of stress and in her trying to hide all those symptoms. Jessica, I know that you do a lot of work in sharing information about Alzheimer's. My question is, you were saying your mom was stressed. You felt like her symptoms, a lot of them were she was showing depression and things like that. But there were a lot of other ways that Alzheimer's can present itself, correct? It's not just depression.
Oh, no. That was just for my mom. I think everyone's different.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I want to make sure people know.
And to be clear, right, like we didn't know that it was Alzheimer's disease until the doctor had done the number of like the battery of tests and assessments and observing. And even then he was like, based off of what we've done and the information that we currently have, I believe it's Alzheimer's. So we have to watch this for the next, 6 to 12 months to see if anything else happens. I think that people oftentimes see, confusion and forgetfulness and just assume that it's Alzheimer's. And it's like, hold the phone, Andy. There's a lot that could happen in this umbrella of dementia. But for my mom, Alzheimer's was the correct diagnosis in the sense that, there's cognitive just impairment in terms of her remembering the tasks she had typically done, the repetition of her, herself, her stories, her questions, the overall just confusion, right? The connection to just her emotional ups and downs. But again, it shows up in people differently.
So tell me about, after this mini stroke, you're still in Texas, and tell me about where she is after this mini stroke, what her abilities are. Tell me about that.
I mean, a TIA is just, it's a mini stroke for a reason. So my mom was functional. She was fine. They put her on some blood pressure medication, and it was like she kept going. So my mom, which is also a misconception, my mother still worked. My mother went back to work a week later. Except for the fact that my mother was now afraid to drive because she got in that car accident. And so colleagues were picking her up for work and taking her to work. And this went on for another year and a half. Because frankly, one of the first things I said when my mother was diagnosed was, who's going to pay for this? Who's going to because at this time, I'm 26 years old. My mother still has a mortgage on the house. I'm just starting my career. The financial picture was terrifying enough. So my mom kept working for as long as she could. So, but I do know that my mother was diminished in her working abilities in the sense that I was never there, but she was probably forgetting things. She was probably frustrating the people she was working with. So it wasn't until, I believe it was the fall of 15, that her principal called me and said, Jessica, what's wrong with your mother? And, I work in education, so I understand when that phone call comes. And I was like, nothing's wrong. And so eventually I said, my mother has early onset Alzheimer's disease. And he said, oh, we're very much worried about her. And because she'd been there for so long, he didn't want to fire her. But he had to say, your mother can no longer be here. And so thank goodness my mom was such a diligent worker. So I basically put my mother on FMLA, family leave, at the top, after winter break. So at the top of the year. And because she worked so diligently, my mother had enough paid time off to basically take her all the way from January to the end of the school year. So my mom got a full paycheck until that end of the year when I officially retired her, which was so relieving and so helpful for us because it allowed me to have full benefits. So I can navigate, just getting her to doctor's appointments, as well as a full paycheck to put away to take care of her in the long run. And so it was a blessing, but also very, very heartbreaking because that's how, her career and education had to end, where I was literally swooping in to protect her image, to protect her dignity, to get her out of that situation. When I now know, in hindsight, I'm sure people were talking about her. I'm sure she was the brunt of so many just jokes and frustrations. And that breaks my heart because it's she didn't know and she was here by herself, all the things. I get so emotional about it. I'm just if I would have seen it, if I wasn't by myself, could I have pulled her out of this earlier? I don't know. I can't go back. But yeah, that's where my mom was. So that was all up until she officially retired in 2016.
I'm assuming it was right before she turned 67 at the same time, because that would have been the retirement age. She made it to retirement, which is interesting. You know what I mean?
Close enough. Yeah, exactly. Wow. Yeah.
So when you all are having this conversation, so it's you and your mom, and you are the dynamic duo. Okay. Yeah. What is this conversation like after the principal? Because you're seeing these things. What's the conversation with your mom? Because I can tell you, our mom was all you're the kids, and I'll let you know when I need. Our mom is fiercely independent. Trust me. There's a reason we get it honest. And so what was that like as you're having conversations? Are you talking about, hey, mom, I'm your, let's get our documentation in line in case something happens, especially after your mom had the mini stroke. Are you all prepared in the sense from financially? Do you know how much money are you in the middle of that biscuit?
Yeah, at this point, like I'm very much doing a lot of this from afar, but I'm like in the mix, right? And so everything from getting the power of attorney, the healthcare power of attorney, getting my, my name on accounts, right? But at the same time, my mom, as many people are, was in denial that there was something wrong. It's like, what are you talking about? I'm fine, right? Like even like in having the conversations around, her home, because again, I'm 26 years old. You're getting all this input from people and like the conversations of like selling her home so that you have the money to take care of her and like all this stuff. And so my mom was like, oh no. And I quickly realized and quickly learned we are not selling Constance's house. But like that was a conversation. And she like every time it was like, absolutely not. What are you talking about? Like, and so my mom knew that something was happening to her. Yet when you like approached her about it, it was almost like, let's shut this down. We're not engaging in this conversation. Or she would get really sad, like, what's wrong with me? And so I learned very quickly to kind of tiptoe around it, say enough to get what I needed, to build the trust of like, hey, I need to be your power of attorney so that I can make decisions if something happens to you. Or like, I would have to give it in pretty plain language without talking about the disease that was beginning to, creep in. I would also say that so in terms of prepared, I mean, I had enough to get things done, but I don't think that we ever really had like end of life conversations. We never had, my mom didn't have very much. There wasn't very much of a financial conversation to have, but I wish I would have known more earlier. Even things like deeds and trusts and, all of that, which I had to learn by doing. I wasn't prepared for ahead of time. Absolutely not.
No. So I'm going to bounce back like we normally do. So we're going to talk about you because you are, at this point, you are in Texas and you are beginning life. You're beginning your independence. You're building your career. What's going through your head at this time? Like, where are you?
Yeah. So I'm exhausted because I am holding all of this while trying to figure out like who is Jessica as a young professional. You also learn very early, right? Like you put your head down, you grind, you want to achieve and move up the, the corporate ladder, right? You don't tell anyone what you're going through at home, right? And so like a lot of it I was carrying silently, like that no one really knew. And at the time, my peers were not talking about caregiving. So I didn't think anyone understood what I was going through. And people, and folks who did know would be like, well, have you looked at the Alzheimer Association? No shade, right? Like, well, have you looked at these other organizations? And it's like, these people don't look like me. These people are in different parts of their lives, right? They're like 40 plus, right? Like life looks different for them. And so I very much at this moment in time felt like in my own little silo trying to figure it out. This is also like me, Jessica, not knowing anything about forms of dementia. All I know is what I've seen on TV, which is very little because we don't cover accurately what dementia looks like on TV. But what I did know is that like my mom was still independent enough to be at home. My mom still had like energy and personality needed to be engaged with. And so I went into like full action mode. So every time I would fly home, I would set up new systems and routines. Okay, you need to be engaged. This is the box of like all of our puzzles, all your like your word search, word finds. Here's your latch hooks, right? Like here's that. Okay, cool. You're losing weight. I'm now going to prep 40 meals and put them in the freezer with labels so that you can now go heat up your meals and I can make sure that you're eating. Oh my goodness, Constance, you're losing weight and your clothes don't fit. Now I'm coming home and like I'm spending, hundreds of dollars to make sure that her clothes are fit and she's presentable when she goes to church. So when I think about like who was I between like 26 and 28, flying back and forth 3-hour flights, 1-hour drives down from DC to our home in Virginia. I'm like pulling all-nighters home for 4 to 5 days just to keep up the image, keeping up with, the things my mother needs that people think and people perceive that everything's okay when things in my like are crumbling because I'm so, just exhausted. Wow. So that's where I was. I was holding a lot and for a long time holding it by myself. No one knew the intensity of it until I had to like I knew that I had to tell my, my work colleagues, my boss, because it was becoming to be like just too much.
Yeah.
I just jotted down the word illusion. It's this illusion, it's this, I hear you saying we had to keep up the illusion. And because for your mom, because you have such, I hear the high regard for your mom. You clearly love your mother. And we always, I feel the same way. Like we've had some dental issues for our mom and we're like, this can't go on. Like we have been on the people like, this can't go on. This is not right. Like, and it's something that feels like it's little, but it's not. And so that when you said making sure my mom had the clothes that fit her when she went to church, that I'm going to sit there and be like, man, I hear you on that. And so, so you're going back and forth. You're 26 to 28. How's your personal life?
We always do that. We're like, how's that going?
I mean, you've got career, but that's super cute. How's your personal life?
Yeah, up until 30. So I moved home at 30. So pre-30, like when I lived in Dallas, I think that I was really intentional. Like when I was in Dallas, I was in Dallas, meaning that like I had my own routines. I had my own just like set of friends. And so, yeah, I made every effort to be connected and socialize and build relationships. Like my friends very much kept me sane in many ways when I was in Dallas. And by kept me sane, it's like inviting me to things. And you want to go get drinks, you want to go to dinner, right? Like not letting me or not assuming that I didn't have the space or time, even when I might have been too tired or might have said no. But it was we see you, let's keep inviting you, which I really appreciated. And so in terms of my social life, I had like a number of friends, like I had things to do. I made choices to still travel, right? Like I was still hopping to Mexico. Like I was very much, when my mom was still able to be in the home by herself, before the wandering stages started, before I had to pay for external help, I was still able to make choices that allowed me to be with other people. I think the question that people often ask underneath that is like, what about a relationship? Like I've been single this entire time. And that doesn't actually bother me, especially now that we're in the stage that we're in. I'm jumping ahead, but like this is going to end soon. Right. And so this is just a season. And so like are there days I'm just like, I just wish I wasn't doing this alone. I wish there was someone I could lean on. I wish someone understood like how tough this was, whether that was a sibling or a partner. Right? I don't have that. And so like that has just been part of my journey, but one that I'm not like resentful of in any way.
Yeah.
So what was the crisis that triggered the move? Because it always, caregiving really happens like hot in a crisis typically. Like there's something that pushes you over the edge or like, all right, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, it was a couple of things. So one, it was just Jessica, you can't keep paying for a life in two places. I still had my apartment. I like all of my stuff in Dallas, but I wasn't there because I was traveling like every week and a half, And so there was like a financial, this didn't make sense. So there was that. And then like the flying to be back at work for like 9 a.m. meetings just didn't make sense. But that was like personal. For my mom, my mother, I had at this point hired like a local care agency to be with my mom for 4 hours a day. I could only really afford 3 days a week because my mom was bored. My mom was walking and talking up until 2022. So like my mom just needed a companion. So I was paying for that. But after 4 hours, my mom was still like bolting out the front door. So my mom would leave the house and she never really went far, but she loved the neighbor's house. And if I loved the neighbor's house, she would like go down their driveway and like just sit in their garage, like scare my neighbors half to death because she's just sitting in their garage, or like eating peanuts or, and then like I would hear stories of like, well, your mother brought over all these dresses. And I was like, gotcha. So my mom was no longer just sitting and talking. She was like doing strange things.
Yeah.
And so there was that. And like, when I tell you my neighbor calls me and leaves multiple messages like every day, you tell like his patience was gone. And then the biggest thing that broke the camel's back is that my mom had gone to church every Sunday. She was still singing in the choir. By this point, she wasn't leading anything, but when you live with Alzheimer's, the brain is fascinating, but my mom might have had the most confusing day. Yet you get her up in the choir stand on a Sunday, her mouth is moving, she is singing, she is part of the group, right? And so that was so important to her. However, I get a call This is February. I don't know the year at this moment in time, but it was a lady from church. And this is my biggest fear. The lady said, "We're concerned about your mom. And we're concerned because she has poor hygiene. She smells, Jessica." And I said, "What are you like?" At this point, I think I was like I don't know where I was, somewhere for a work conference, and so I'm on defense because it was like my biggest. I had worked so hard, right, to like keep up the, not just the illusion, but to like protect her from people talking about her, right? Yes. Like, and or like having this side convo about we're worried about Constance. What I learned is my mom, even though she was taking a shower, which I walked her through step by step via camera, she was then putting on dirty clothes after the shower. So now my mom is leaving the house, even though from the camera she looks clean. Instead of putting on the clean clothes that's clearly labeled in her closet that I worked really hard to create this system, she's putting on dirty clothes. So she's leaving the house with really bad odor. And then one Sunday morning, I tried to get her dressed. She had a dress on, and then she put pants over her dress. And then she was not dressed appropriately. And I said, no, we can't do this. And it was that series of things that was like, Jessica, get home. No one can take care of your mom like you. This is like, you can no longer make ends meet by using a set of home cameras, right? You can no longer trust that people are going to look out for your mom, because in the end of the day, they're just going to talk about her versus help her. Like that's how I felt. And so I said, oh no, I gotta go. And so I, March, so it was spring break 2019, I packed everything up. I put it in storage, and I thought that I was, at the time in 2019, it felt like my life was crumbling and I couldn't see beyond the current moment. And I remember telling a coach, I was like, I'm giving up so much. Like, all this is happening to me. I can't even dream. I don't know what's coming next for me, but I know that I have to go be with my mom. And obviously, like, you're so consumed. Fast forward, and it was like the best decision I could have ever made. But in the moment, at that time, I'm close to 30, or I am 30, and I didn't have a guidebook, or I didn't see other people doing it, and so it felt like I was giving up so much, and that I was the one that had to sacrifice, and I was okay doing it because my mom sacrificed so much for me, But that's why I moved back in my childhood bedroom.
Oh, I'm like, my heart hurts for you, because I feel like, I think there's so many folks who will hear this and be like, I can relate, because that's the reluctant caregiver piece of it. It's not that you don't love your person. And sometimes you don't like them, but that doesn't mean you don't love them.
Right.
And because sometimes people are hard to like, but it's still okay for both things to be true. I want to honor my parent, and I also think this is really crappy. I can't believe I'm living my life this way, but I love my parent. You know what I mean? Like, both things are allowed to be true.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the emotions with it are like polar opposite. And I don't think for me, and I know, Jay, for you, I mean, we've never felt like, whoa, like, I didn't expect to have emotions that were so far apart on the spectrum. You know what I mean? Give me 1 second. We're going to take the last break because this is too good, Jay. I don't know about you, but my inbox is always cluttered with useless emails. But there's one I always open, the Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver newsletter. You may say, Natalie, what makes yours so special? Well, I'm biased, but don't just take my word for it. Here's what our subscribers say they love. First, it comes once per month, and you can read it in under 5 minutes. Next, you'll find amazing tips and resources to use in your everyday life. And who doesn't love a recommendation? These sisters do, which is why we share sister-approved products and discount links to save you time and money. And of course, you're first to know about the upcoming month's confessions. Just like our show, you're guaranteed to relate, be inspired, leave with helpful tips and resources, and of course, laugh. Go to our website, confessionsofareluctantcaregiver.com, to sign up for our newsletter today.
Hey, everybody, we are back here with Jessica Guthrie, and Jessica has just made the move back home. We got she's moving. She just got into something of a crisis situation, and it was the turning point. There are a lot of emotions involved in that move. So, Jessica, let's start. You're there. You're back
in your childhood home.
Childhood bedroom. You know,
wait, I'm trying to think of like how old she was at this point. I'm like, what are the posters on the wall?
Yeah.
What are the posters? Like in my mind, I'm like in sync, and I'm like, you're tearing up my heart when I'm with you. I knew I'd work in some singing.
Yeah.
I had luckily since I was traveling back and forth, I knew this was eventually coming. So I was like preparing for to be back. So it wasn't as childhood as I think people might think it was. Like we had changed the room over.
You need those posters.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So there were two big things. I think one, it was I didn't have a model of what it was like to work virtually. And so my boss at the time was very supportive. He was like, yeah, you should change your home base. Like that makes so much sense. And I was like, you mean I've been stressing about this and you've been supportive the whole time? Anyway, that's a different conversation. But he was really supportive. And so I'm grateful that they said, yes, you can work from home. Wow. But I spent a lot of time in my head being like, I want people to still see me as competent, right? Like I'm not slacking off because I'm not there in person. Jessica, you're leader of this team. Like people need to see that you're still doing things, right? Like it's one thing to be an individual contributor, but it's another thing to now be the manager, be the leader and not be there, right? And so how are you still setting the example? So I spent a lot of time probably overdoing it and working harder so that people wouldn't think that just because Jessica's gotten the privilege to be at home or to work virtually, she's not engaged. Little did I know the pandemic would happen a year later and everybody would be doing that. But
exactly.
In the moment, it felt very novel, right? So there was that. And then it was, how do I now keep my mom engaged? And I am seeing, yes, I've always seen everything real time. But now there's no hopping on a plane to escape it, right? I was always home, every 10 to 14 days, but I still had a week away. And now it's this is front and center. And I am seeing my mom in all the messiness of where this disease currently is. I'm watching her, her walking gait change. I'm watching her short-term memory very much fade, but I'm also watching my mom have so much joy. And I'm seeing my mom in a new light now because I'm here and I'm present, and you realize how much energy and zest for life she still had, even as things were changing for her. And so I was able to spend, especially those first 2 years, so 2019 and 2020, really making new memories and tapping into, the story she had always told me, and taking her back to her childhood stomping grounds in Arlington, right? It's just doing things to create memories for me, but to create experiences for us, because I now wasn't stressed or trying to fit everything into a 3-day visit. It was just okay, so what's next? We're here, present and proximate. And it allows you to really slow down. And I think that's the biggest lesson in this moving back home, is that as my mom has declined, I have also had the ability to slow down. And my mom at this stage doesn't need me to make a million systems and routines for medication and, how we go about our day. My mom needs me to be present and hold her hand and sing songs to her, right? My mom needs me to sit next to her so we can watch TV and laugh like we used to do her hair, to do her nails, to make her feel good and feel seen and valued. So that's been the beauty and the gift of moving back home. And I think the maturity too, though. I mean, I am a different person. I just am not the same person who moved back home in 2019. I see success, I see time, I see energy so differently now because I've been present to steward my mom through this set of experiences as she declines in Alzheimer's disease.
I'm sitting here Jessica is wise beyond her years.
Thanks.
I am so sitting here in awe of the insight that you have. And I think it's a relationship. I think it is the fact that you can be as insightful as you are and see the other side of that is very hard for people to get there. Do you know what I mean? It's easy to get stuck in the day-to-day frustrations.
Yes.
And step back and go up 10,000 feet up and look at it and say, I get to do this. I get to do this, as opposed to I have to.
Yep.
And I think you've given us, I'm sitting here like, there's not enough 30-second reels on here. I'm like, I want everybody just to listen to this because it's so important, because it doesn't matter. I think for me, it goes back to the common thread is it's not about the illness itself. Like it could be Alzheimer's or dementia. It could be Parkinson's, it could be whatever. It's what are you going to do with the situation? And everybody's is different. Everybody's is different. Mm-hmm. So you and your mom get into this routine. And I know that, gosh, man, Jay, our time is coming up. Oh, we clearly are gonna. We're gonna stick around.
You got to get to the where we are now, though. So
yeah, exactly.
I know that your mom has declined, and I know there was a point where you guys had made a decision. You had made a decision where your mom had to go to hospice. Is that right, Jessica?
Yes, my mother. Yes. So you asked me where this wisdom comes from or where this maturity comes from. It's when you believe your person's going to die. When you get to the end, when you start preparing, you look at life very differently. You look at your person very differently. You look at the moments in time that you have very differently. And in May 2022, my mother had a number of infections. She was falling. She was no longer ambulatory. She could not sit up on her own. She had lost weight, right? Like my mother was a full max assist for everything, which are all indicators of significant decline, which is what qualified her for hospice. Yeah. And I had got to the point where I could no longer, like I was beyond stressed calling the fire department pretty much multiple times a week because I couldn't get her up off the floor on my own. And like we'd been in the hospital 4 times, January through April, that I said, I think it's time. And her primary care physician said, oh yeah, I think she'd be a good candidate. So that's when I decided to put her onto home hospice. But I will tell you, and I think people have a lot of misconceptions about home hospice, but I think the consistency of care, the attention to detail, the attention on my mother helped my mother plateau. My mom actually stabilized on home hospice. And so while we were admitted May 2022, my mother was discharged March 2023. My mother is still fully bedbound, no longer ambulatory, all the things. However, she's stable. She's thriving in her current stage, which I'm so grateful for. So that's where we are. But to the point is, I visited 3 funeral homes. I made the plans. Wow. I was like, when the time comes, I don't want to be stressed about this. I just want to say, here's the papers, here's the stuff, let's go. You know what I mean? Like I want to use it. I want the end for me to be with my mom by her bedside singing songs. And I don't want the stress of anybody else's stress and emotions messing me up in that time. You know what I mean? So, but when you do that, you realize how precious life is. And so even though she's been discharged, every single hour of time with my mom, I consider to be magic time. Because it's a gift that I wasn't even expecting. And so that's why I can slow down and be so present with her now.
I want to be Jessica's friend forever, I've decided. I think you are an amazing human being. I know JJ's getting teary-eyed. She's always a snot sandwich, Jess.
Sorry, Jessica.
Sorry. She does. She's a snotty sandwich. And so, because it's so great. Like, that is something that I think it's like aspirational. Like, and the reality is that you can do it. It's choice. Mm-hmm. You can do it. It's choice. Mm-hmm. And it's hard, probably. It was probably not easy because you just said, hey, I went and looked at 3 funeral homes. People were like, well, you said it like it was just like, hey, I went shopping for a new pair of shoes. And you're like, no. And I mean, for me, I'd be sitting there at the same time being like, well, I'm going to want this casket because I'm going to like this one better. Like I would start looking at myself in there. Like, am I going to fit in there? Like, what am I going to wear? And then you're like, oh, wait, I'm here for something else. But the fact that you hit it so head on at the same time, it forces you to also look at your own mortality. Mm-hmm. Like if you think about that and you've got this, I don't know what the right word is. I'm looking for it. You're resigned to it. You're like, it's going to happen and it's okay. I won't let this fear and the stress and anxiety control me. So your mom, I love that your mom, when I read this, my mom was on home hospice and then she's off. And I think a lot of people be like, what do you mean she's off? I thought that when you went on home hospice, the expectation was you were required to pass. And then,
it's not.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that It's okay. First of all, Medicare in the United States is just a mess. So it's all driven by that. And I think essentially you have to basically say, should your disease take its natural course, your person will die within 6 months or less.
That's right.
And so my mom had all the symptoms that she was declining. And I think this is where forms of dementia don't play fair, or like Alzheimer's disease doesn't play fair, and that you can have a steep decline and then plateau for a long time. Yeah. And I think because my mother was no longer stressed, we got rid of medications. We weren't trying to figure out how to get to the hospital, like all the external factors that make things really stressful for Alzheimer's patients we had gotten rid of, which I think allowed her to slow down. But so yes, being discharged, or as they say, graduating, is actually quite common, especially for dementia patients who might experience a decline, but then might not be too close to death. And because of this, the way in which it's currently designed in this country, if you're not dying fast enough, they basically remove all of those resources for you because you're not close enough to the end. But what people don't realize is that when you get discharged, it's literally like pulling a rug from underneath you, because all the equipment, all the supplies, all the in-home care goes away just like that. And so, like I called it, like I'm in the wild, wild west. It's just me and my mom trying to figure it out. And so, like it's a really strange transition, but it happens to a lot of people in this country. Mm-hmm.
It feels wrong, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. And
why would you do that to people?
Mm-hmm. Especially when you realize the resources are allowing people to actually like thrive and be here longer. Yeah. And so it's like, oh no, we're going to take you off so that things progress. And then you can come back when you like have very little time left. It's like, wait, but shouldn't everyone deserves compassionate care no matter how long it's going to be?
That's exactly right.
Anyway, that's a whole different probably podcast.
That is like that is like a day long podcast, sister. That's all I'm saying, because we are on that soapbox with you. So,
I think, so you've moved back in with your mom. Clearly I'm going to go over. I don't really. You moved back in with your mom. And you have the pandemic, because I thought about this before we started today, and I was kind of glancing over, refreshing my noggin about this. I thought, we all looked at the pandemic as this bad thing, right? And we can all agree there were bad things that happened to people. I don't think that the pandemic negatively affected us in the same way. It did not affect my family in the same way. You know what I mean? Like for some people, it actually was a silver lining. And so exactly what you said, you're like, oh my gosh, I felt so bad and I overworked and I tried to compensate so that people wouldn't think that I wasn't doing my part. That's a value. That's a value statement. We've learned that from what you've seen. Like I have to work hard, if not, and as opposed to like, I don't care what they think. I mean, I'm going through this. So you you have the pandemic and it feels like it's a little bit of a silver lining. Like, I mean, total. And now we can't push it back in the box either. Like if you really think about it, people are like, oh, you should come back to the office. And everybody's like, that's cute. I'm not doing that. And I think about how it is for caregivers. I think about how it is for us. Had we not had the pandemic, I'm not sure I could have kept working when we went to New York City and Jason was receiving his treatment. It would have, we didn't do things that way. And so I look at it now and I know that you talk about what you work on. You've got caregiving and career collide. So tell me about that.
Yeah. So I started this platform because it very much felt like a collision. It felt like whoa, right? Like, what do I choose? What do I do? TV and movies would tell me that I'm supposed to have a white picket fence and everything's supposed to be figured out, right? Like I'm supposed to have married, multiple kids, and like move my mother in with me, right? Like that's how the movies make it seem. It's like, oh no, that's not where I'm at. And so I had to figure out. So there was like that just dissonance in my head, on top of the fact that I believe that people had grasped enough what it looked like for people to be parents in the workplace. But people were not thinking about what it meant to be caregivers of other adults or loved ones in the workplace, and how I very much felt unseen. Like I felt like I was having to always, bring it up or fight the uphill battle, or, people be like, we have to respect the mothers on the call because they have, school pickup. And I was like, I might not have a kid, but my caregiver leaves at 4:00 too, right? Like my life changes at the same time, right? And so I feel like I was always trying to make sure that we were visible and people understood it. There was more inclusive in their language. I share this to say the whole point of when career and caregiving collide was to amplify the stories of us young millennial caregivers who were struck with this, decision instead of choices of how to prioritize you and your career and what was next, as well as like prioritizing and showing up for your family and all that comes in between that. And how do I get the necessary tools and resources to thrive, but also where can I go to feel seen and valued? And I thought when I was 26 years old that no one was going through this, that my story was so unique. And what I found, especially by sharing on social media, that like there are hundreds of thousands of people who have a really similar story, or right, like there's moments of my journey that are like really similar to someone else. And so I've created this community of people who get it, and it's been really helpful and affirming, and just realizing that, gosh, sure, we can talk all about the systems failing, but in the end of the day, there are people who are genuinely, right, like just doing the very best they can and just want to feel seen and connected to other people doing the very best they can, right? So that's how it all started.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so I'm going to stop us and then we're going to chat a little bit more in after the confession, because there's more things I want to ask you. So, but JJ, let's go to sister questions, and I'll ask your question, ma'am.
So she's totally full of all this wisdom, and at her age, I wish I was there, but she's amazing. So, my favorite, I always say this is my favorite thing when she said she's made so much with her mom. It worked because she's here, present, and proximate. And I love that when you said that. I'm like, when I'm with mom, that's my new statement. And the magic time. I'm like, that's beautiful. So, but here's my question, because I, refreshed. Nellie's like, hurry it up. My question is, what would you tell before you knew this was going on, at your 20s self? What would you tell yourself if you were, at your younger self? What's the lesson that you've learned now that you wish you knew back then? What would you tell your younger self?
Oh, I think two things come to mind. One is, this is a marathon, not a sprint. Slow down. You don't have to have all the answers tomorrow. And that it's important to let people in to your story so they can help you along the way. There is nothing, to be ashamed of or wrong about asking for help and letting people wrap their arms around you. But I didn't know what I didn't know, right? And so there's that. But then also it's just like Jessica, your job will be a supportive place. And at the same time, it's just a job. And your mother's well-being and your well-being should always be first. Because I was burning the candle at both ends. When I look back, I'm just like, Lord, I don't know how we made it. I don't know how I did it. It could have ended very badly for me, just like mentally and physically, and it didn't. But I would have said, Jessica, it's just a job. It'll work out. You don't have to stay in Dallas. You can move. I would have go home, go be with your mom sooner is what I would have told myself, actually.
Okay, because I just need you to know, Jessica, that I'm an M&M. I'm a hard candy shell on the outside, and I'm very soft on the inside. And you're making me want to cry. Oh, and so I love that. I love that you say that, because it's so sincere. And your job, there will be jobs. And I mean, JJ and I are getting ready to do something big, and it's like, and I'm asking my husband, for example, like, hey, we're getting ready to do something really big. I think it could be really impactful. And I might have to make some changes. And he's scared. And I'm like, there'll be another job. Mm-hmm. And I just have to trust in God that he's going to take care of me. Mm-hmm. And I think it was the same way in caregiving. Like, I trusted in God, like, okay, I'm going to get through this. Oh, I just love that. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm glad we had our moment together in front of everybody. So here's my question. It's the best one. Although I do love JJ's question too. What is the one thing that you do for yourself? What is your guilty pleasure? The one thing that you do just for yourself?
Listen, I know that they get bad raps, but I love an amazing spa day, and I will save my money to make sure it happens. And it requires discipline to financial discipline to put the money aside. I have to pay for a caregiver, all the things. But I'm a connoisseur of luxury spas, and so that is a guilty pleasure, but a thing that I like to shut everything off, to put the phone in the locker, to know that my mom is okay, to get the massage, to soak in the tub, to do the sauna, like all that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Connoisseur. There it is. She's a connoisseur.
It's note that she has to get respite, do all these things to do that. But when you do, you're able to fully unplug.
Oh, I'm unplugged, and then I'm so refreshed after. Like, I'm a better caregiver.
I love it. I love
taking care of yourself. That's wonderful.
Thank you so much for being with us. This is so much fun. We could talk to you all day. You're one of those people who were just like, I'm just leaning in. I'm just like your girlfriend. Hey, and the best part, are you still in Virginia?
I am. Mm-hmm.
She's going to want to come and visit you. I'm so sorry.
Oh my God. She'll be like, why is Natalie at my doorstep? Why is my mom and Natalie just hanging out? I'm like, what? I thought we were like that. Come on, Jessica. Come on. You got to Jess. I lost some of the letters at the end. Yeah. All right, guys. Stick around. We're gonna chat with Jess after the confession, and so stick around and for those of you who don't end up listening in until we confess again. We'll see you next time. Thanks.
Bye.